Hey guys, and welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to talk about Unit 11, sine, cosine, and tangent ratio of trigonometry, and how to use these ratios to solve problems related to right-angled triangles. So we have to understand that these trigonometric ratios are used to solve problems related to right-angled triangles. So if you have a right angle that has a missing side and one of the angles is shown, you can use the trigonometric ratios. And if you're trying to find one of the angles, we're not talking about the right angle, the other angles. It means you can use the trigonometric ratios to find the angle using two of the triangle's sides. Now, let's take a look at the ideas and then also show you some questions to answer and we will understand together. First, I'm going to explain the three trigonometric ratios here so you can understand them in one step. Okay. First, we use something called SOHCAHTOA. Explain the trigonometric ratio. SOHCAHTOA. I'll explain the idea using SOHCAHTOA. Okay. Let's make it bigger. Bigger. So, so we have SOHCAHTOA. Now let me split the sides like this. Now, we use SOHCAHTOA like this to remember the trigonometric ratios and the rules and formulas of trigonometric ratios. So, S is for what? S is for sine. C, cosine. T, tangent. So, sine, cosine, and tangent. Now, each word here has two other letters, which is the O and the H, A and H, O and A. First, let me show you the right angle triangle. If we have a right angle triangle like this is the right angle. The line opposite to the right angle is called, very good, the height, which is the hypotenuse. So this one is the height. This one is the height. Let's make it smaller. So the line opposite to the right angle is called the height. And let's say we are working on this angle. Let's say this is 30, for example. Just using it to explain the idea. So let's say this angle is 30. So the line next to the angle, which is attached to the angle, it's touching the angle here, it's called the adjacent. It's called the adjacent. So ADJ. And the line opposite to the angle, which is over here, is called what? Very good. It's called the opposite. It's called the opposite. Let's use a different color. So this one is called the opposite. So basically, we have three lines in a right angle triangle. The one opposite to the right angle is called the hypotenuse. And then if we have this angle and we're working on this angle, the line next to it, it's called the adjacent, and the line opposite to it is called the opposite. Now, as you can see, hype means H, opposite is O, adjacent is A. This means that we understand these formulas here. So let's write them. Sine of an angle, so let's write it sine like this. Sine equals opposite over height. Opposite over height. Let's make it bigger. So sine of the angle equals opposite over height. This is the first formula, which is for the sine. So the sine ratio equals opposite over. Next one, we have the C, which is the cosine. So the cosine of the angle equals adjacent, which is A, adjacent over the height, over the height. So basically the height is always in the denominator. Okay. And then the last one here, we have the T, which is the tan or the tangent. So tan of the angle will equal opposite divide adjacent. Opposite divide adjacent. So opposite divide adjacent. And these three formulas are used in trigonometric ratios to find the missing lines and the missing angles. We will understand the ideas once we look at the questions. First, let me tell you this. Once you have a triangle, you have to look at the lines that you have and then choose the right trigonometric ratio to use the triangle. I'll give you an example here. Let's say we have a triangle like this, and the angle here is 50, for example. This is one of the questions, maybe. Just an example to explain how to use the trigonometric ratios. Now, this is 50. Let's say this one is 7. Let's say this one is x. Okay, this one is, let's say this is 7, 7. And this one is x. So the question will tell you find the value of x. Find the value of x. So basically, the first thing you need to do is write the names of the lines that you have. The names of the lines that you have. For instance, this is the right angle. You have to understand this. This is the right angle. And the line opposite to the right angle is, very good, the height. This is the height. So you come next to it, you write height. And as I said, you only write the names of the lines that you have or want to find. This one, we don't have it. We don't want to find it, so we don't write the name of this line. Okay? So we have it or we want to find it. And this line, which is the x, is what? Very good. It's opposite to the angle. So we write opposite next to it. So basically, we look at the lines that we have. We have the height, which is h, and we have the opposite here, which is o. So we look at the three trigonometric ratios formulas, and we want something that has the height and the opposite in it. So we look here, this one has the opposite and height. It means this is the trigonometric ratio that we want to use. But this one has the adjacent, so we can't use it. This one has the adjacent, we can't use it. That's the idea of finding the right formula or the right trigonometric ratio formula. So depending on the lines that you have, you're gonna choose one of the right, you're gonna choose the right trigonometric ratio and then use it, answer the question. So let me answer this question here for you so you understand the idea. Let's cover this. So basically, we chose the sine ratio, which is so. If you memorize this SOHCAHTOA, you don't need to memorize these because you already know that so means what? Sine equals opposite over height. So you write it like this. So this means sine equals opposite over height. Opposite over height. Now, after writing the formula, next thing you do is what? You put the numbers, substitute the numbers. So sine of the angle, so sine of 50. So we write it like this, sine of 50 equals the opposite, which is x. We write it as x over the height, which is 7 over 7. Okay. Follow the right steps. Don't jump into steps because you might have any mistakes and you can't fix them. So you have to write step after another so you know what is your mistake. So now basically I want to find x. Find x, I'm going to take the 7 to the other side because it's divided here. I'm going to take it by multiplying. And focus on this. If you have a fraction and you want to move something from the fraction, you only can move the denominator. You can only move the denominator and you have to move the whole denominator. For example, if this is 7 plus 1, or 7 plus x, you have to move the whole thing, 7 plus x, the other side by multiplying. So this is a 7. I'm going to move the denominator this side because it was divided. I'm going to make it multiplied. So it's going to be like this. 7 times sine 50. Sine 50 like this equals x. Okay, let's write x in capital so you know. Or let's remove this and put a dot so you understand it's multiplied. Okay. So 7 times sine of 50 equals x. Now focus on this. When you take the denominator, the other side, and you want to multiply it by the ratio, always write the number for the ratio. So the number, which is 7, times sine of 50 equals x. Even in the calculator, when you do it, you have to write the 7 for the sine of 50. Now you come to the calculator, right? And you want to find the value of x now. You write 7 times sine 50. And you'll get the answer, which is 5.36. 5.36. And sometimes they will tell you to round it to the nearest decimal place. So this one will be what? Very good. Nearest decimal place. It means they need one number in after the decimal point. So you look at the 6. The 6 is big. This will add 1 to the 3, and the final answer will be 5.4. So the value of x is 5.4 centimeters, depending on the question. And this is how you answer a question like this. So focus on the steps of solving, focus on the formulas that you want to use, and focus on the idea of SOHCAHTOA. Now, let me give you another question, and let's use one of the trigonometric ratios, and then you understand the idea. Let's cover this first. Now we understand how to use the trigonometric ratios. Let's take another question. Okay? And then choose the right trigonometric ratio for our question. Second question here will be like this. Okay? Let's pick the question here. Okay. Let's say the angle is 30. The lines here we have, for example, here let's call it A, and this one let's call it 5, for example. So we have a 5 and A and 30. Now, basically, as we said, first thing we do, we find what? We find the names of the lines. So we find the names of the lines. So first, I can see that the line opposite to the right angle is the height. The height here is not used. It's not given, and they don't want me to find it. This means that we don't want the height, or we don't want any formula that has the height. So basically, the names of the lines here, this is next to the angle, what we call it? Very good. We call it the adjacent. So next to the angle, it's the adjacent. And the other line, it's opposite to the angle, as you can see. So we call it the opposite. We call it the opposite. As we said, this is very important to solve these problems. First thing, you need to find the names of the lines and then choose the right trigonometric ratio to answer the question. So here, as we said, we have what? We have the adjacent and the opposite. It means the height, we're not going to use it. So any formula that has h, we don't use it. So this one, we don't use it. This one, we don't use it. And the last one doesn't have h. It has the opposite and the adjacent. It means we can use it. And that's the idea of choosing the right trigonometric ratio to solve the problems. So let's start solving using TOA. So first thing we do, we write TOA. And then the meaning of TOA is tan equals opposite over adjacent. So opposite over adjacent as a function. Yes. Now we substitute the numbers. The numbers that we have tan 30. So we write it like this, tan 30 equals. Now the opposite is what? The opposite is 5. So we write 5. And adjacent is A, so we write A. So tan of 30 equals 5 over A. Now, what are we trying to find? We're trying to find A. As we said, we can't move the numerator. We only move the denominator. And when we move the denominator from a fraction, we have to move the whole denominator. So we take the A because it's divided. I'm going to take it to the other side by multiplying. So it's going to be like this. A times tan 30 equals 5. Now that's the first step of moving the denominator. Now I want the a alone, or I want to make the a the subject. It means I have to move the tan 30 to the other side. And because it's multiplied, I'm going to move it to the other side by dividing. Very good, dividing. So it's going to go to the other side by dividing. So I end up with a equals 5 over tan 30. Focus on the steps and focus on the numbers. Now, sometimes in the calculator, they will ask you for brackets, so you have to close them like this. So as we said, a equals 5 over or divide tan 30. Now you come to the calculator, use it, find the value of a. So in the calculator, I'm going to write it like this, fraction 5, and I go down, I write tan 30. As I said, it's going to ask you for a bracket. You can close it or you don't have to, depending on the calculators. So the final answer is 8.660. And to round it to one decimal place, it means that A will equal 8.7. Focus on rounding and focus on the question. If they tell you to round, you have to round. If they didn't ask you to round, it's okay, but it's better to round. Okay? Sometimes they will tell you to write the whole numbers that you have in the calculator without rounding. And that's the idea of finding the missing side using a trigonometric ratio in a right angle triangle. Now, this is the first part of SOHCAHTOA. Now, the second part is about finding the missing angle using SOHCAHTOA or sine, cosine, tan ratios. Now, let me show you one of the questions that you need to understand, and then we will solve the rest. First, let's cover this. Let's make it white. The whole idea of SOHCAHTOA or sine cosine trigonometric ratios is understanding the steps. If you understand the steps, you'll get the idea. So let's remove this. Now, our next question will be about finding the missing angle using the trigonometric ratio. I'll show you the question and we will solve it together. So first, let's take a look at the question. Let's say we have a triangle like this. Let me draw it here. And in this triangle, we are missing an angle. So the angle sign will be something like this. The sign is called theta. Let's say it's over here. They will write it like this as a 0 and a line in the middle. This is called theta. Theta for a missing angle. Now, this is the first part. Second part, they will give you the lines. For example, they will give you this line as 8. Let's say 8, yes. And the other line is 5. So we have two lines, and sometimes they will give you three lines. If they give you three lines, it means you can use any trigonometric ratio that you want, as long as you write the names of the lines and you be accurate with the lines. But if they give you like two lines, it means you have to choose one of the right formulas to use. So first thing we do, we have to figure out the names of the lines that we have. So that's the angle here. Let's put the angle, close the angle here. This is the angle, and this is the right angle here. So first thing we do, as we said, this line is what? Very good. This is the height. So we write height next to it. And the other line here, it's opposite to the angle. So let's write opposite next to it. So basically here, we have a right angle triangle, and we have two lines, which are the height and the opposite. It means I need a trigonometric ratio that has the height and the opposite, not the adjacent. It means any formula that has the adjacent, I can't use it. I only need the opposite and the height because I only have the opposite and the height. This means I have to use the sine ratio. Now, Using the sine ratio, let me explain how, okay? First thing we do, we write the formula. So, so, so means what? Sine of the angle equals opposite over height. Opposite over height. Focus on the steps here, same steps that we did before, but I'm going to add one more step. So sine of the angle equals opposite over height. That's the first step. Now I'm going to substitute the numbers. So this means that sine of the angle that I don't know, which is theta, equals the opposite, which is 5. Very good. So equals, let's write it here, 5, which is the opposite, over the height, which is 8, which is 8. Now I got my fraction here, 5 over 8. Now, to find the missing angle, there is one more step that you're going to use or do in the calculator. This step is what? Now, after finding this fraction, I'll tell you where to put it in the calculator. First thing you do, you come to the calculator and you press shift. You press shift on the calculator, shift, and then press the trigonometric ratio that we're using. If we're using sine, this means you have to press sine. If we're using cosine, you have to press cosine. If you're using tan, you have to press tan after shift. We use this method to find the missing angles only. If we're finding missing sides, we don't use it. But if we're trying to find the missing angles, we have to use this method. So shift plus sine, which is the ratio that I'm using here, and then you push equals, or sometimes you don't have to push equals. It will give you the ratio that you're going to work with. This will give you what? If you press shift and sine, the calculator will give you something like this called the inverse sine. Sine with a power of -1. It's called the inverse sine or the inverse trigonometric ratio. So this one is called inverse ratio or inverse sine. It's okay. So it depends on what? It depends on the ratio you're using. If you're using this, it will give you inverse cosine. If you're using this, it will give you inverse tan. So basically, it's the inverse ratio or trigonometric ratio. Now, after you have this, the calculator will show it to you like this: sine inverse, which is of -1, and it will open a bracket for you like this. Now, after opening a bracket like this, you have to take the fraction that you had here and put it inside the bracket. So take the fraction and put it inside the bracket over here. So basically, we're going to put 5 over 8 like this. It depends on the fraction you had from the question. Put it inside the bracket and then close the bracket like this with a ratio and then push equals. This idea will find the angle for you. So basically, as we said, we push shift and then sine. It will give us inverse sine with an open bracket. We put the fraction inside, which is 5 over 8. In some calculators, you have to close the bracket. Some of them you won't. So the answer will be given to you, which is 38.682. Now, sometimes depending on the question, you need to round it to one decimal place or a whole number. If I round it to one decimal place, it's going to be 38.7. If I'm rounding to a whole number, it's going to be 39. And this is how you find an angle using the trigonometric ratios. And this is how you answer a question like this. So basically, these or this method simplifies the whole sine, cosine, and tan ratio in finding the missing lines and the missing angles in right angled triangle. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.